what the answer was to end these pandemics, this suffering. What would stop the hate?
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Exploring You, our podcast to help you navigate the personal development jungle. My name is Alexandra Katzer, nature coach and forest bathing guide.
And I'm Darren Alexandra from the Mind Core CIC and Elysium NLP.
And today we have a very special guest, Jamie London Wollberg. And we are super excited to have you, Jamie. Jamie is a leader of love, a Reiki master, a psychic and galactic channeler, and he's helping corporate leaders to get out of burnout and stay out of burnout. So I'm super excited. Both Darren and I are super excited to have you on this show today, Jamie, and welcome.
Namaste. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And, these are some of my favorite topics. And I'm honored. Let's dive in.
Perfect.
Good to speak to you, Jamie. Good to see you.
It's great to meet you.
So for a start, Jamie, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Who I am. Oh, how deep do you want to go?
We have an hour. Go as deep.
Yeah. As deep as you like. Yes.
I have really started to think about this question and answer this question as well as the where are you from question very differently. Depends on my audience and how deep the layers go. Who I am is a soul fractal that is a part of the collective consciousness that we refer to now as the human consciousness. And the expansion of me that we understand now is Jamie. And in this human vessel, I experience Earth as well as many other realms. In Earth form, I was born and raised in New York, New York, and very proud and happy to be back after a 6-year stint in Los Angeles. I am a leader of love is the simplest way to encompass quite literally everything that I am, because everything that I experience and everything that I understand and understand and overstand about existence is that it all comes from unconditional love. And whether you call that source or God or Allah or universe or the grid or the simulation, whatever it is that you want to say, I believe that is all of unconditional love. Mm-hmm. And my journey through my waking in and the tri-awakening that initially came before that all was and has been and still remains to be an expanded journey of unconditional love, and what that even means and how important that is to understanding and overstanding who we are and why we're here.
So when you talk about unconditional love, when did you realize that this is important, or what changed in your world to come to that conclusion?
There's, I would say, a two-part answer to this. The first part is the tri-awakening, which started around 2014. Into 2015, I became bedridden. The short version is that this ended up being a bunch of autoimmune diseases and things that stemmed from when I was 21 years old. I had got Lyme's disease, which for those who are around the world and they're like, what's that? There's an insect called a tick, which is very common in wooded areas in the United States. And it is very easy to get bit by one, even if you're properly dressed like I was, because I was a literal Girl Scout. I knew what to wear, but I still ended up with this. And they carry, like mosquitoes, all sorts of things that are not fun. And it can be quite life ruining, honestly. For not only the person going through it, but anybody who cares for them. And when I was 4, I had almost died of pneumonia when I was about 4 and a half. And I was hospitalized for 10 days. And through these health journeys and being bedridden, I had only time to think and really be in 10 out of 10 pain and confusion. And I found myself questioning about my spirituality as well as my identity. And that was as I was assigned female at birth. So I lived through basically until I was 25. I lived through my life as a woman. I was raised into womanhood. And so all of this happened like at once, basically for me. It happened over time, but there was a very specific moment where I was really at peak suffering experience. And I was incredibly suicidal. From a very early age, it was understood, even by those around me, reflected to me now, that I was a nurturer, that I was here to help people. And I figured that out, but I didn't understand what that meant or how. And so I, being 10 out of 10 pain, confused, unguided, well, feeling unguided, right? That was the perception, feeling unguided and all of that. You know, for being bedridden for on and off for 8 years, and going through that really just was that tipping point initially for me to understand a lot of things about the world and what mattered. Most people don't spend their 20s dealing with the things that I dealt with. And as most people know, being trans and non-binary in this world is not currently the most common thing. So that in itself is a unique experience where there now are more books to help you through it. But at the time, there were even less understanding because that was already like a decade ago. Isn't that wild? It's wild to me. In chronological time. And so through that experience, I really reclaimed myself. There was quite literally this moment where I truly like prayed for my first time and asked for God. It was like my actual, what someone referred to as their Hail Mary. I mean, I'm Eastern European Jew, not very religiously raised on both sides, but like for some reason, that is the thing that comes to me every time I come to this. It was just like my actual desperate last moment, my last attempt of like, you have 3 seconds to answer the phone line before I hang up and I say I give up and I'm done. And it was not a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory moment where I jumped out of bed and immediately, you know, was able to function and live my life. But I made a commitment at that time because I finally received a message. And I can't still to this day fully explain to you all of what that was and what that felt like, but it was like nothing I had ever experienced to that point. And suddenly I knew that no matter what, I was not going to give up and that I was here to help people. I was going to figure it out, that I was going to get out of bed. And that was what I asked. I said, if you let me out of this bed, I promise I will spend the rest of my life healing myself. I will live my truth and I will help others to do the same. Now, fast forward to part 2, which is pandemic times, where a lot of us started to experience journeys with more plant medicines and fungi medicines. And I had probably my first journey home alone by myself. And I was in Los Angeles at this time. I'm in my apartment as well. We all were. And I'm pacing around. I'm pacing around my apartment and having this entire dialogue with Source God, the mushrooms, and I was highly emotional. And the conversation that I was having was, frankly, like a demand to know what the answer was to end these pandemics, this suffering. What would stop the hate? What would bring in the love? What is going to fix this? Like, I truly wanted the answer, because in my mind, there was not just this health pandemic, there was a social pandemic and so much more. And I'm very nonviolent, and it's taken me a very long time to get to that space, but I'm extremely not of judgment of this, but very much like people are like, well, if this and that and the other was happening, and I'm like, I mean, I won't really know until I'm there in the moment, but unless I'm like protecting people or something, and that is the true only way to help and protect people, I truly don't think I could. So the answer that I got was unconditional love. And I said, well, first of all, I started immediately crying. Like, it was incredibly profound. My body was vibrating. I lit up. I felt, hot. I mean, like, this was this huge activation. And from part 1 to part 2, right, that's a couple of years, and a lot happened in that time. I ended up on Clubhouse. I ended up waking much more to all of this, and I started to understand that we were not waking up, we were waking in, ergo my company. We'll talk about that later. But ultimately, this view, like, even though a lot had happened in this point, I was still pretty early in really this sort of like galactic level view of spirituality and getting this awareness. So I was pretty both shocked and not shocked. And I didn't really understand what was happening to me at that time. Now I do. But at the time, I absolutely didn't. So it was a little unnerving to have such an emotional experience and to feel like this was the most euphoric, real thing. And I immediately knew I'm spending the rest of my life with this. And I don't know what that looks like, but this is where it is from then. And there was absolutely no looking back after that point. Absolutely everything that's happened has stemmed forward from that, but it's all happened in this lifetime from such a young age. And, it's come through the many lifetimes that I've come to remember and not remember.
You mentioned you felt unguided, and I'm just wondering, what's the difference now? How did you realize there is a guiding energy around it? Because I in my healing journey, I sort of noticed this as well, that there is support around us. And when I look back, I was always worried that, like, for example, when I set up my business, it's not working out, like always the worst case scenario in my mind. And then I started also with intuitive writing, connecting with spirits, like, for example, my granddad came through in one of the writings, and I get the message that I am supported. And when I look back in my life, I can see it, but it's not easy, or for me, it wasn't that easy to get there. So how was it for you? Was it like a process, or was it like all of a sudden it was here, like the feeling of unconditional love? What was your experience with that?
I love that question. I mean, it was both all at once and a process, and still is. I believe that everything is quite literally, like that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I do think that is truly what's happening. So from a perspective, there's never been a time or timeline or lifetime where this process was not happening. Again, if everything is from unconditional love, then it's always all at once automatic. In the moment, like, to me, that moment specifically was that initial moment when I prayed and I got that answer and everything. To me, that was the first moment where I felt I am guided. And this came from, I felt so disassociated and so different. I was so confused. I thought that I wanted to be normal, but I realized eventually that really what I wanted was to belong. And I know that, I'd written about that and in Spirit. That is a profound shift in thinking. Because in humans, we are ingrained to desire this belonging, there is something about the human experience that is meant to be truly a collective grouping experience. And it's fascinating because the process that we undergo is we're a part of everything. Then as a human being, we become a part of someone, right? Regardless of what type of being brought it in, we have a gestation period, we come out of someone, right? In that 9-month period, take plus or minus, depending, you know, you are experiencing this being a part of someone, and energetically, of course, being a part of all of everyone, and both beings that created you, and all of that. And then we come out, and we're like, suddenly, immediately, you are surrounded by everyone, and energetically by the billions of the collective, and you know, you are a part of that. But also as an infant, you feel, you know, helpless, needing to be cared for. You're so close to source that, you know, I think that we're still really on the edge of understanding what is happening within us as an infant. And I think we're going to find, probably in the next 20 to 30 years, a lot more information that is going to show how aware we are already. But the issue is that, right, we don't have the capacity as a human to communicate that, really, outside of crying and screaming, and, you know, that's about it. So, you know, and then we come into this space of our identity starts to form, right? And we start to have an understanding of who we are, and we start to, you know, even as toddlers, right, we say no, or we say yes, like that initial power of a toddler who's like no for the first time and just says no to almost everything, even if they love it, just because they're pushing and exploring their boundaries. And so as we start to form our identity, we start to create this perspective of individualism. And so then suddenly we're a part of everyone in this individualism. And in our society, there's a very quick separation that is happening. And we're at a point where our collective and our society is like, wait, we don't want to do this anymore. Like, a lot of us don't want to do this anymore. And actually, we are all here, and we are going home, and we're all part of this. And like, I don't want to do it alone. And then the other half is like, well, I'm solo, and I have to do this all alone, and I have to do this and then the other, and this is my project, and this is my thing. And it's, you know, it's the whole beautiful ego journey. And so the reality is that there are all of these realities and perspectives, and everyone is experiencing whatever they are perceiving, because that, our belief system and what we perceive, that's what's creating our world. Because at the end of the day, we are the center of our world. We have the whole of consciousness in us, and it's our word and view of this. By the way, it's now happened so many times, I have to mention this. You have had so many fairies and angels flying past your screen, Alexandra, behind you, and every time I see it, it's happened like at least 5 times. So I can't wait to see back the footage. I mean, earlier we weren't recording, but it's, you know, that tends to happen when I'm around. You know, so did I answer the question? I mean, I could go on for that for quite a long time.
I think you did well.
Good.
I'm just curious. You talk about unconditional love, but also setting boundaries. So maybe give us a bit of an explanation. What's your understanding of unconditional love? I'm curious to know how you see it as unconditional love.
Sure. So unconditional love is actually what love is. And humanity has created a belief system and perspective around love being conditional. So I'm going to explain why I perceive it this way and how I've come to understand this. Unconditional love, right? If that is everything and everything is infinite, then conditions around something that's infinite, that doesn't really make sense, because even if there's a condition in this moment or this timeline or this person or this feeling right in this specific moment, because that's a pure moment, that doesn't change the truth of everything else. All truths are true. So it really, because it's true for whoever it is and whatever they're experiencing. So ultimately, I say unconditional love because the guidance that I received was, we have come to place too many conditions on love. Now, unconditional love means I love you unconditionally no matter what. This is where people are like, no. And I'm like, take a deep breath, hear me out. This does not mean that we love everyone's behavior. It does not mean that we condone everyone's behavior. It doesn't mean we need to like everybody. It doesn't mean that we need to be around everybody. It doesn't mean that everybody gets to just do whatever they want to us and that it's like, you know, it's a free for all. It's none of that. It's the concept of I am you and you are me. We are all experiencing a human experience. We all have basic needs. And it's an experience that we often perceive to be really difficult. And so, like, maybe cut each other some slack because we're all navigating this wild thing together, perceivingly for a lot of us the first time. And we are all our unique fractal. And so it's the unconditional love of all in one, because if I don't unconditionally love you, that means I don't unconditionally love me, especially because for me, I believe that you are me and I am you and we are we. So that would be contradictory. Now, boundaries are super healthy and important, and we can have boundaries that are not healthy. My sort of, you know, vague definition of that, if you will, would look something like, you know, a healthy boundary is something that does not serve my highest good, your highest good, and the highest good of all. Right? A healthy boundary is something that we are in balance and it's serving everyone for our highest good. That's not a right or wrong, because I don't believe in all right or all wrong or all black and all white. I mean, there are the extremes, and people freak out. They're like, oh, you don't believe in polarity? I do. There's just more. There's so much more than that. And so this is an understanding of the expansionness of everything, because we're just perceiving ourselves in this way as humans, which is a miracle. It is incredible. It is magical that we are able to perceive our energy, atoms moving all around and all of this, and our frequency and all these waves, and perceive us that, like, you know, I'm wearing a green shirt. We're sitting here on Zoom. We're here as like individuals and also together. Like that's a miracle. That's amazing. If we place conditions on love, that's where we have resistance and we feel abandoned as opposed to belonging. Now, the boundaries are to protect ourselves, to protect others, to ensure that our needs are met. I like to say our desires, because at the end of the day, we desire our needs to be met. And if we say a need, then we may be feeling a sense of lack, like we don't have something. But if we desire something, it's what's possible for us. So what's possible for this collective is that we are in our remembrance of unconditional love, and that we free ourselves from the burdens of these high intensity emotions that we don't actually enjoy. Like the majority of us don't really like feeling angry, at least not for a long time. That's quite different than feeling like competitive and playful in the game and having some sort of, you know, intensity. But the anger, the stress, all of these things we know in humanity are literally killing us. So, you know, when we free ourselves from this, we get to allow for people to be exactly who they are. We get to appreciate who they are in the balance of everything else. And if we don't like their behavior and we don't enjoy being them, we don't condone it, then we just don't need to be around them. And we just shine our light that much more. And we can inspire and support, we can separate off, right? I tend to go to a very extreme example of this because I think it's a fair way to really show this. Hitler. As someone of Jewish descent, and those in my family who did and did not survive the Holocaust and escape in this and that, I used to, understandably, as many, like be very angry with Hitler, right? Um, and my understanding of Hitler was very limited because I only saw Hitler. I basically didn't even see him as a person, or even that he had a soul. I actually perceived him to be soulless, and I was just like, this is this monster who like came and created this massive genocide and all this anger, and this rippled off and harmed so many people, including the generations of people in Germany now who had nothing to do with any of that. You know, and um I was so angry and I was so hurt, and it ripped me up inside. Like it impacted me all the time. I saw it impacted people, especially with just how much anti-Semitism is going on, and even in what's going on in New York. The pandemic picked that up a lot somehow. Still trying to figure out why. But you know, during the pandemic times, there was a moment when I participated in a clubhouse room where there was um, a space that was opened energetically through the Akashic Records to Hitler. And during that experience, a version of this being that was an aspect of me named David, who was there at that time of when Hitler was present, came to speak to little Hitler. So, like young Hitler, like child Hitler, way before any of that could have possibly been an idea in his mind, cognitively speaking. And literally, the vision that I had was I came into the void of like heaven. It was all white, like clouds. And I literally just saw little David, maybe like age, 5, 6, something like that, and little Hitler. And they're staring at each other face to face. And Hitler says, "I'm so sorry. And if I could do anything to take it all back, I would. But this was what I was there to do," kind of thing. And they hugged, and I was crying. Everyone in the room was crying. At this point, as I'm sharing to them everything that's going on, and I was just one piece of that space where we, it was confidential space. I'm not going to share more to that, but that's not really necessary to make this point, which is that in that space that was filled with people of all walks of life, all races, all ethnicities, all experiences, we came to see the soul that was of the collective. We came to see the human being. We came to acknowledge that these behaviors were actually a very short amount of time in his entire life. And that ultimately, I'm grateful that I don't have to be Hitler this life. I don't have to worry about being a villain because that's not my design and my not DNA. Since that day, I have in recent years, probably in the last like 2 years, really come to understand and receive the messaging that Hitler was an earth angel. That greatly upsets a lot of people to think about that. And I want everyone to know who's listening right now, if anything that I've said feels offensive or has hurt you, that is completely okay. This is a process that everyone will or will not choose to undergo. And wherever you are in your journey and however you feel about what happened and everything is completely okay. I also want to clarify that, again, my family was directly impacted. I do not condone this behavior. I am still upset by what happened. I am still upset. But I also understand on a zoom out level, consciously and collectively, that this whole good versus evil that we have created, this paradox in humanity and society, helps us to understand unconditional love, helps us to understand free will, helps us to understand the capacity and the power that we have, and also the power and capacity that we often give up. There are so many layers to this. So a simpler example is if your best friend does something that you do not like, well, you have a choice. Was it something that impacted you to a degree that you firmly cannot, separate yourself from that and you don't want to be friends with them anymore, which is okay? Or do you see this as an opportunity to be like, okay, this is an individual person and they have this thing or they took this action, I didn't like it, but like, was this a repeated action? Was the one-time thing? Are they remorseful? Do they, what was everything like before? Does this one moment? We're all human. I want to be very clear that we all have the capacity to do what Hitler did. Every single one of us is completely capable of murdering someone, of hurting someone, even unintentionally. We all do it because we're human. We're on this journey of figuring it out. We don't always see eye to eye. It's not always coming from this malicious place of, I want to hurt you. We're all figuring it out. And we all have circumstances and upbringing and generational traumas and all of these things that the human has experienced. And if you're a believer in other lifetimes and things as well before, that, that are all really now. In my perspective, it's all happening now. That formed these beliefs, that formed this pain and opinion. We have a lot of healing to do. And everything that I just said does not mean we ignore the racism and the anti-Semitism and the transphobia and the ageism and the fat phobia and all of these things. This does not mean that we ignore these things. It's a lens to help us get through it easier. It's a lens that creates a possibility of harmony and peace and love. Initially, I could not handle Donald Trump. I was like, I can't do it. He's trying to kill. I had this complete view. He's here to kill me because he's transphobic and this and the other. I created all these things. This was before I stopped watching the news because I realized that it was all colored by a lot of money and politics and opinions, and I was not getting the full story. And I quite literally wanted nothing to do with anybody who had voted for Trump. I now have people who are deeply close to me in my life, who are both similar and different to me in a lot of ways, who had voted for Trump. Some wish they didn't, some are okay with it. I've chosen to maintain bonds with people because they were just doing the best of what they thought for the world at that time from the perspective and circumstances that they had. Does it change the fact that they show up for me, that they love me unconditionally, that they're there for me when I need them, that they support my mission of unconditional love and belief? We all get to make these decisions ourselves. We all get to make these discernments. What's important to remember is that we've been marketed to since day one. Since day one. So remember how susceptible we can be, and remember how powerful we can be. And to check in with yourself and your own intuition and your own knowing and your own beliefs as to what feels good for you. Because I can promise you that unconditional love feels way better than being angry all the time. I'm an Aries. I used to be angry all the time. I had a lot to be angry about. I've also navigated and been blessed with a lot of privileges, but that doesn't mean that I've also not had a very extreme time. Gone through a lot of challenges that certain people in this lifetime will not experience. And it's not a better than or less than, and there's no oppression Olympics. It's simply my experience has shown me anger does not feel good. It makes you literally sick. I believe that it truly almost killed me. And coming into unconditional love and choosing to take that journey with myself has helped me tremendously to free myself, to care for myself, to create opportunities that I desire, to attract the people that I want in my life, and to make healthy boundaries for myself. And all of this helps me on a personal and professional basis.
Fantastic. What crossed my mind when you spoke about David and Hitler and seeing them as young people is also the thought that we choose our parents because we have something to do in this lifetime. And when I heard it the first time, I was I was upset. I thought, I choose this crap with a shitty hip and that caused so much suffering and stressed parents that already, like my mom in the womb, already get all the stress hormones. It really made me upset. But then on the other hand, it's also very empowering, because it means, okay, if I choose this, then I can change something. I can do something about it. I don't have to, I'm not the victim anymore. It's in my hands to make changes. So that's a very, very good point. But how do you see, because I feel this anger that you mentioned, a lot of people they are still in this victim mode and don't or maybe don't understand or don't see it, or also struggle, how do I get out of it? Do you have any tips or ideas how to deal with that?
Absolutely. So the first caveat that I will say is, unfortunately, not everyone is going to choose this path. And it's also not, unfortunately, because it's their path and it's beautiful and it's perfect and it's still incredible balance. See, there goes another one just flying right by you. And it's at the end of the day, not all of us are meant to ascend. It doesn't mean people get left behind, even though that's the perspective that many seem to paint and hold, is that like some of us are going on and some of us are not. And although that is somewhat true, as everything is one, it just goes right back. So, they may meet up later. A lot of people freak out that they're like, oh, well, if I ascend, then I'm going to, and I used to freak out too. I was like, I don't want to leave behind like all these people that I love. But it's like, by the time we actually do that, we're not going to feel these ways. We're not going to have those types of attachments and things that we're releasing, and we're going to realize that we're going to see them again. So the first tip that I have is both the most obvious and least obvious one somehow, which is you've got to face it within you. You need to actually choose to go inward and actually face your pain and your fear and your suffering and your guilt and your shame and all of these things that are within you that are blocking you from having this open perspective. Everyone can be guided. No one can do it for you. Otherwise, I don't understand why, on a practical level, there's billions of us. We all have a part of the load to carry. We're all carrying. That's why the unconditional love is so beautiful and appropriate, because there's not anybody here who's not carrying it, who's not a baby trying to figure it out. We were not born with a manual for life. We were born with a society that dictated a whole bunch of things that ended up separating us and confusing us, so that we could learn a lot of stuff so that our soul could expand. So we need to go inward. And whether that for you looks like one thing or a combination of things, I'm a very big fan of there's no one pill. There is no magic pill that you can take and suddenly everything comes into place. It's several things. So whether you choose to meditate, whether you choose therapy, whether you choose psychotherapy, whether you choose to go into nature on voyages, whether you choose to go to a group community, whether it is that you're using art or other tools, there's a lot of ways to do it. It's going to require you to be alone, in a perception of being alone. And you can do this in group form to an extent if you are all there for that same purpose and intention. And also, you still got to have time for physical aloneness. It's really, really important. And I used to be so afraid of being alone. So afraid. That was part of why I was so angry. Because my perception was, if I am in belonging and I belong, then I won't be alone. So I realized that I was never alone. And I realized that in this perception of loneliness and spending time alone, these are the things that we get to face. So when we look inward and we address these things, when we address our traumas, when we address our dreams, these are the ways that we come to understand and understand ourselves more. And we need to look at a physical body level, a mental body level, an emotional body level, a spiritual body level, in order for us to really see the wholeness of who we are. Because even though we are a fractal, we are not fractured. We are so multifaceted. We have so much going on within us. So we're never alone, number one. Number two, we got to be alone and we got to face it. And number three, ask for help. Ask for support when and where you need it. Just because you need time alone to do this doesn't mean you always need to be alone with it. Doesn't mean you need to carry it alone. A lot of why we get pent up in these emotions is because we're not expressing them. And it's through my transition, actually. Sorry, I need to move my legs. just because, we brought ourselves into this space. My transition has been a huge part of me understanding this, because as someone who truly feels like I lived a full life as a woman and then started to go into transition where I actually at that time was identifying as a trans man, now identify as trans masculine non-binary. Through that journey and through hormone therapy, I started to understand a couple of really key things for this. Number one, hormones are the deciding factor of absolutely everything in the 3D world outside of our own free will and our awareness. If you want to talk about something in your body that has that amount of power, it's hormones. We all have estrogen, testosterone, but that level being more one way or the other changes everything. I started to open up in ways where I was a hyper feminist and, had all these ways that was in victimhood around men, not only men, but also men. I was not seeing the full picture. Going through this journey has had me reevaluate my understanding of men, of masculinity. It's had me re-review also femininity and what these hormones are capable of doing. Before testosterone therapy, it's now been a little over 9 years since I've been undergoing that process. I was even though I am an autistic adult, I was incredibly verbal in a lot of ways. I was cognitively able to do things like poetry with ease and, really express myself openly. And it was also because, in a way, I was told to shut up and stay silent, right, as we know, but also amongst other women, I was able to express myself much more openly. And it was incredible to discover that quite literally, very quickly after taking testosterone, that crayon box of the biggest box of emotions and my ability to express shrunk to this. And suddenly, I couldn't figure out how I was feeling. I couldn't communicate it as well. I couldn't convey even in myself. And the result of this was frustration and anger.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, holy shit. There was literally a moment where I was like, whoa. And I was like, oh my God, I need to apologize to a lot of men. I was like, because I was like, we have really gotten this backwards and sideways. We have trapped men and masculinity through not having proper understanding from a psychosocial scientific point of view with testosterone to understand quite literally how differently we think and we feel and what's possible. When you do not have the capacity to express yourself appropriately, anger builds up. It's the first thing that happens because you don't feel seen, you don't feel heard, you feel like you can't communicate. And so the energetic builds. And that is where, again, resistance with belonging. So we all want to feel seen. We all want to feel heard. We all want to feel understood because that's what we associate belonging to feel like. We associate that this is what belonging is. So what I discovered throughout all of this is that we were lied to a lot. We were unintentionally lied to a lot because I think that there's a lot of this that we truly just don't know. I believe very firmly that a lot of this we don't know because there are powers that be that don't want us to know because having this information is extraordinarily powerful and will actually allow for a lot less separation. It's going to allow for a lot more empathy and compassion and sympathy. And it's going to change the way that we look at how we communicate and what communication means. It also helped me to look at the divine energies very differently. It never resonated with me at all that femininity was only all this like soft thing and flow and this, that, and the other. The first thing I think of when I think of divine femininity is Mother Nature. And I don't know the last time you talked to anybody who's gone through a tsunami, a tornado, a massive hurricane, right, an earthquake. Do we look at Mother Nature as gentle then? I do not feel nurtured by her when everything and everyone that we care about is destroyed. It's a force of nature. That's the reason we have this phrase, force of nature. I also discovered that my masculinity is very soft, and very recently, someone said to me, what I love about you is that your masculine is feminine and your feminine is masculine. And I had never felt so seen than in that precise moment. And I got so emotional when I said to her, I was like, thank you. From the bottom of my heart and everything that is within me, you see and you understand this. And now I want you to understand and see that this is not just about me. It's about all of us. We have got to look at, if we want things to progress into unconditional love, if we want to free ourselves, if we want to truly be free. Today is the 4th of July in the United States. This whole story and narrative that everyone was freed. Our souls are free. As humans, we do not experience that. We have free will and we forget and we don't know how to utilize it. And we spend a lot of time suppressing other people because we are so eager and desperate to belong. And it's this programming that we need to override. The blame game is not helping. What's helping is us acknowledging this happened. These people are hurt in these various ways. We're all sorry. And we all want to do and be better. So what does that look like? It looks like getting real and listening to these open narratives and understanding that these programs, like, right, like we update our phones. We update our phones all the time. The moment that there's a new phone, everyone wants it. They're like, well, it's better technology, right? Well, we update ourselves and our own perspective. It doesn't actually make scientific, logical, practical sense to gain new information and ignore it. But that's what happens a lot. So now what's happening is we're starting to ignore it less. So stop ignoring yourself. Understand that you are absolutely divinely unique. That you are unconditionally loved, that you are worthy of unconditional love, that you are perfect exactly as you are and as you continue to expand and grow into yourself. And that more and more people are seeing this because we want this. Initially, the resistance that people give me, I don't take that personally. 5 agreements. I don't take that personally. That's not about me. If you don't like what I'm saying here, that's not about me because I love you unconditionally anyway. Like, you could be so mad at me right now. You could want me to die and I will love you unconditionally. I don't love that you want me to die or that you want harm on me, but I understand where you're coming from, because chances are a lot happened to get you there. Because especially if you don't know me, you have no reason not to like me. And this is true for everybody. So we've got to face ourselves and release any have tos or shoulds or coulds or woulds and just make choices, because that's the freedom and that's what we have. And if we can embody this, then we will free humanity. We will free ourselves. We are making choices all the time, and every choice makes a million other little choices that we don't even see. So let's go in. Let's wake ourselves in to who we truly are, to our own self-worth, because when we love ourselves unconditionally, we can love others unconditionally.
Beautiful. I so relate to that. It really starts with ourselves. And also, I like what you mentioned about there is no magic pill that makes everything go away or change what you feel. You need to do the work. And I want to touch on one point, especially with spirituality. I've been in communities where it's like no negativity. Everything is just love and light, no negativity. Like all the negative feelings we just push away. And from my experience or my understanding, I feel this is not the right way either. So I just want to touch base on how you see spiritual bypassing.
The way that I see spiritual bypassing is if we are choosing to ignore our humanity, then we are actually not practicing the fullness of spirituality, because we came here as spiritual beings to be human, which means our pain is real, our sadness is real, our rage is real. All of these things really happened, because even if we want to say they didn't happen, there's enough people that feels and felt and experienced that it happened, and that's all that matters. There's this like autopilot mode that we go into of someone says, well, I experienced this, and if we don't haven't experienced this, we're like, this is attacking our truth. It's a total autopilot. I don't actually think that anybody is cognitively thinking this through. I truly believe this is an autopilot programmed response. It's a reaction of, you are different than me, your truth doesn't match up with mine, and because it doesn't, then it could mean that you're telling me that I'm not true and that what I experienced wasn't real, and it invalidates me. So no one wants to feel invalidated. Again, all truths are true. All truths are true. It doesn't matter what someone says, because everything both doesn't matter and does matter. Because everything is as true as we say. Because again, it's a miracle that we all have this ability to see and view what it is. And whether you come from the scientific view or the spiritual view or any view that's in between, it's amazing that we're here and that we're all perceiving all of this. So we can choose to engage in our spirituality, to be in the higher frequencies, to choose new words, to choose new ways of being all of this. But it's not really spiritual in my perspective to then be hating and blaming other people who are not there. I'm here to meet people where they are. If they are not where I am, that's because they're meant to be where they are. They're meant to activate me, and I'm meant to activate them. I'm going to learn something, they're going to learn something. If we were all the same, well, what's the point of that? I mean, I'm sure there's a timeline, whatever, in a universe, whatever, that we all are the same. And frankly, there's a little bit of me that's curious about what that would look like. But it would probably be really boring. Really boring. You know, I think we'd be so bored that we would be doing what a lot of these galactic species are doing, which is they're supporting Earth, or they're supporting other planets, or they're attaching themselves because they're like, what else do we have to do? We're like, we already figured out all these other things. So spiritual bypassing does happen. I think that it's very natural that a lot of us go through that process. I can absolutely say with humility that I've for sure had moments where I had to be checked. I don't feel that that happens anymore, but I think that earlier in my spiritual development, I was really going through a big ego journey. And that's healthy that we're all going through that, right? Because we had this programming around all of this. So we can't nurture and love the ego and alchemize all of this and everything if we ignore all of that. So it's important to acknowledge. It's important that we see the full scope of everything. And again, boundaries are healthy. So you can be spiritual and in your high vibration and not choose to be with people who are not in your vibration. That's frankly science as well. You know, vibrations that are not in the same vibration and frequency are going to show up differently, period, end of statement. That's the science that we understand, right? So that's okay. Again, we don't need to like and love everybody. But if we can love ourselves unconditionally and free ourselves from our judgments within ourselves, we will quickly see that just because I came to this realization right now and someone else is like, you know, major air quotes, feeling stuck in where they are and unchanged, that's okay. That is okay. My truth is still my truth. So I think that it comes from spiritual bypassing actually comes from insecurity. That's what I'm hearing right now.
Comes from, sorry?
It comes from insecurity.
Cool. Wow, that was so interesting for me, like the whole conversation. And I just want to touch a bit on the tipping point briefly. You mentioned like you had this message and that made you realize, okay, I need to help the world to love unconditionally. And in the work with your clients, where do you see is their tipping point, or what sort of, when do they come to see you for help and support?
They come to me when they're at a crossroad, typically. The tipping points in humanity, we for some reason find it delicious to happen in the extremes. So usually it's when we refer to in humanity we've hit rock bottom. Or at least I don't know what the idiom would be, you know, in other cultures, but in America we would say you hit rock bottom.
Totally.
And you know, and you build yourself up from there. There's not even an ounce of doubt that I have that if I had not gone through all of the experiences that I did, I wouldn't be where I am. Because now I understand suffering as a consciousness, and as a perspective and a choice. My pain is real. The challenges and things are real, but it's all about how I perceive it. So we're figuring out this, you know, this fine line. You know, the crossroads is really about I'm here deep in my passion. I'm thriving in certain ways, but I've also like completely blown up kind of a lot of everything else because leaders of love, these corporate executives and entrepreneurs who have these big missions to help humanity, the universe, you know, all that is, they get so focused on their purpose and their mission, they can forget everything else, including the care for themselves. And so they burn out. And that is where people tend to shut down. And everything, you know, your relationships in your personal life, your relationship with your team, your collaborators, your health, your abundance, your perspectives, your emotions, everything gets out of balance. So in a sentence, executives and entrepreneurs come to me when they feel out of balance and they want to be more successful in their lives and need help getting back into balance. And that out of balance I refer to as burnout. And I refer to once you're at a middle point of this, you are balancing beyond burnout. And when you are on the other side of burnout, you are manifesting beyond burnout. And so clients can come to me when they're ready. That's often what happens. They come to me when they're ready to let all that go and to create a new life for themselves where they are stronger and more powerful and engaged in their purpose and their mission, while also having balance within these other areas of their life, because that's what we all are doing, right? Again, if we come back to the energy, the frequency, right, we are attempting to be balanced. That's how we see this. Like, even think of a television, right? These things need to line up and be in alignment for you to understand that there's a picture on the screen. We even need to be in balance and stable enough to be able to see what's on the screen projected. So everything and anything that is around us, whether we perceive it living or not, is energy, and all trying to come into balance. So I help people come into that balance, and that is a matter of empowerment and going there. And the root of it is unconditional love. So we always start there. We look at, how do you love yourself unconditionally? Do you have this perception that you love yourself unconditionally? Do you actually love yourself unconditionally? Do you love your physical body, mental body, emotional body, spiritual body unconditionally? What is happening for you? And how can we help you to strengthen your own self? It's a collaborative effort.
Beautiful. I did the self-love audit with you a couple of weeks ago, and that was really a beautiful experience. And also for me, because of my hip problems, I always feel like my body is letting me down. And in the audit, it was so beautifully highlighted that I need to love my body more. It was really beautiful to see that connection. And so anyone who is listening, I really recommend Jamie's self-love audit. It's beautiful and very insightful.
I'm so glad. And it's free, and it will always be free. This is a guided tool, and it's not so scary. People hear audit and they're like, oh my God, taxes. That's not what it is. An audit means that we are analyzing, looking at our unconditional love within these bodies that are all actually connected, so that we can get a better understanding of them. Now, if we want to go full circle in our conversation, that's what we do in humanity too. We're separated because our collective consciousness wants to understand, and everyone has their own mission and assignment. And then we come back together and we're like, okay, we got a picture now. We know where we're headed. So it really is all happening at once, and it really is all full circle. And I can feel confident in promising you that if you are ready for the self-love audit and you go through that experience with me, by the time you're done with that hour, you won't be able to go back. You can't unsee what you've seen for yourself at that point. And even if people leave off at that point for me and I never hear from them again, at least I know that they have brought themselves that much closer to loving themselves by being guided through that experience.
Sure. All right, I'm looking at the time. Darren, do you have anything that you'd like to share or ask?
Oh, there's loads. I know I've been quiet in the background. It's just I'm just taking it all in. I mean, there's so much we wanted to talk about. I think obviously we've got to be conscious of time, but it was interesting what you were saying about the testosterone level. So I'm going to listen to it again, because there's something I want to bring there. Certainly when dealing with men with mental health issues, how we are not able to talk, or we feel that we're not able to talk, should I say. I'll rephrase it. Is what you're saying there. It kind of triggers something here, and I can't really put into words the way to ask it. So I'm gonna save it for another time, or I might just drop you an email. But it was just an interesting, now you brought that up, where you said that our capacity kind of shrinks in every, what we're doing and the questions that we can ask. So it was interesting that you come up with that one. It's triggered something here, but I'm going to have to think about it to be able to put it to you a bit better. And I wanted to talk about your receive and being sessions that obviously I was listening on a couple of weeks ago, which I found quite interesting. So hopefully we can get you back in again and have another chat about those.
I would be absolutely honored. And yeah, definitely reach out to me. What I'm picking up intuitively is what you're picking up on is the primal aspect, right? So it's like, okay, well, then it's tougher for us to be able to communicate. How do we actually express ourselves? Where does that actually come from? We can express ourselves with testosterone beautifully and powerfully. I wasn't able to cry for a while, which is a very common thing, and now I'm back to being able to cry, and that was a huge part of it because I'm a big crier. Crying is how we release a lot of energy, and when we're angry and we can't cry, then it makes us more angry, or if we're upset and we can't cry. So it's very primal. Testosterone's primal, energetic, in practical is doing, right? And that is sort of how, in part, we've extracted this masculinity, but we've also kind of boxed it because there's so much more there. Because I can watch a commercial and start crying. I can communicate with a bunch of masculine individuals and have a beautiful, vulnerable conversation, right? In the same way that I'm integrating even that much more my divine femininity, and my divine femininity can also be incredibly forceful and very strong and opinionated, and also a doer. So it's about understanding that there's always some layers of truth to all of these things because we came to them. However, hormones didn't listen in and be like, oh, okay, so their society is saying this is what we're going to do. Our hormones are our hormones. That's a scientific thing that is so complicated that scientists still barely understand. It's incredibly complicated, but our hormones actually impact every major system in our body. And it impacts how we traverse the world. And a lot of things that we say, our gender or this or that, are actually our hormones. And it actually takes, ironically, the emotion out of it, even though our hormones are creating emotions and our experience to them and how we process and function. So I hope that gives a little bit more insight to where you were going, but I'm happy to talk about it more, and I would be honored to be back. This has been truly so much fun, and I've loved the conversation. Alexandra, you asked great questions. Really top notch. I love being asked questions also that I'm not typically asked.
Great. Then I think the floor is yours now for your 5 minutes of fame. Any project, anything you would like to promote, feel free to share, Jamie.
Thank you. Yeah, well, so first of all, to wrap back to the self-love audit, that is a free link. It is linked on my LinkedIn under Jamie London Wollberg, as well as on my website. My website is wake, WAKE-in.com, because I believe that we have woken up and now we're waking into ourselves. And that is an hour-free experience. It is 0 strings attached. You will not be sold on that call. Even if you try to get me to sell to you on that call and you're like, I want to buy this program, I will tell you to sleep on it. So know that it's a safe space for you to come and have that space held. I have several prides of joy right now, but the ones that I can speak to publicly coming up first is the Global Gratitude March. It's the second one. It's an annual event that's happening on World Peace Day or World Gratitude Day, which is September 21st, 2024. And this year it's a Saturday, which is way more convenient. And the whole purpose of the Global Gratitude March is a completely volunteer-run event that is totally global. Anyone can participate virtually or in person. We are going to be launching it in person at the headquarters in Astoria Park, Queens, on the Great Lawn, which is a really big park here in New York, and Queens, which is one of the most diverse places in the world. And it's actually covering 2 very powerful ley lines about wisdom and support. And the land apparently was not inhabited quite the way that a lot of other areas indigenously, it was actually a hunting ground and sort of a war ground. So it was almost this communal place where all these different tribes went. So the goal of this is to bring the collective together to raise the collective consciousness higher through a gratitude framework. Every time we do this, we create it within perpetuity. So you can even on my website, if you go to the tabs and you go to Global Gratitude March, you'll be able to experience last year's for free and receive and also provide. We have all sorts of experiences that happen. This year, it's going to be like a picnic, and people can do watch parties or other ways to connect. But it's going to be fun. It's powerful. It's family friendly. So we have things for all ages and walks of life. Both the actual babies and adult babies are all cared for. It is a march because it's not a parade. It's not a protest. There is nothing to fight about. Everyone can have at least one thing to be grateful for. Gratitude has been a huge thing that saved my life, and it's scientifically proven to help save lives. So we look forward to having everyone and anyone there. It is completely free event. And we're looking for a lot of volunteers to help us out and participate around the world. So if that's something that interests you, please reach out or go to the website and you'll be able to fill out a form that takes 30 seconds and we will get super quickly back to you because we're building out all of that now. We've started that process in January, but it took a while to get our permits. So here we are. And that was a channel in from Buddha that I received last year around this time of year, actually. And the next thing is the Practical to Play retreats, where we are going to guide executives and entrepreneurs through resting, resetting, and recharging in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We have 2 different retreats that are 3.5 days long each. The venue is secured and it is absolutely magical. It's on the Honorable Tsuki land. This is a very private, luxurious retreat where only 6 people at a time. We're looking at duos. So whether you're a power couple, whether you're 2 managers or 2 founders together, 2 podcasters, whether you're siblings or best friends, come and rest, enjoy, recreate yourself. There's a hot tub. Santa Fe is magical in the winter. We're going to take you to the Ojai Springs. Like, it's going to be so amazing. And we're really looking forward to seeing them and empowering them to create this transformation. It's going to be so fun and so special. So our first dates are the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th. I believe that's the first Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is the half day for December. And the 2nd, I believe, is around the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th. That Thursday, and we would love to have you. You can learn more about that on the retreats there. And overall, I just redid my website. I've realized that Reiki is the foundation of everything that I do, and I serve on a corporate level and I serve on a one-on-one level. So if you are ready to transform out of burnout, say goodbye, to get yourself back in a balance, to figure out how to have the more that you so desire, come find me. I'm around on Waken to Love, on across social media, or Waken or Jamie London Wollberg. Mostly you can find me on LinkedIn and in Spirit, which is a community that Jake Houston, shout out to Jake, has created. And that is how we are here together right now.
Exactly. That's where we met. Yes.
That's where we met. So that's a beautiful space for conscious leaders to come and to support one another, and we can't not speak to that right now to say thank you to Jake, or none of this would be happening.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for this. Yeah, thank you, Jake, and thank you, Alexandra and Darren, for this opportunity and for holding the space and being the space, and also just for being exactly who you are right now. And I'm really like high-fiving our souls for making this agreement that this was going to play out, and I look forward to where this takes us. And if you're hearing this, know that I love you unconditionally, that you are worthy of love in every single moment, and you have incredible gifts within you that are here for a purpose. So please decipher what that is, ask the big questions, reach out to me for support, reach out to whoever resonates. because we're all resonating, we're all figuring it out, and you are not alone. You've never been alone.
Beautiful ending. Thank you so much,
Beautiful.
Jamie.
Thank you. Namaste, everyone.
I feel quite good about this one. It's a beautiful ending. We've never had anything like that before, so that's fantastic.
I'm so glad. I'm very grateful. I really, really enjoyed it.
Good. Are we going to finish
Darren,
off then, Alexandra? Yeah.
Yes, I think so. Darren, you have the promo list you always talk about.
Right, the promos. So we always have our supporters we're very grateful for, which is the PromoDoodle, the Professional Bodyguard Association, Burnley District Motorcycle Club, Mira, Gervacio, and a new supporter for us is Tailors of Liverpool. If you want a nice, quiet, enchanting evening on a secret level in a secret bar in Liverpool, it's no more secret because I've just told you about it. You do get on the website. You do need a password to get in. So Tailors of Liverpool is a lovely place to go to. We're also very grateful and eternally grateful for any donations to our cause for the retreat and training centre for men and veterans with mental health, either through Easy Fundraising or the GoFundMe page. And always, I know it's usually Alexandra who says this, but I'm going to say it today. Please like, share, comment, and everything, especially share it of our podcasts. We've got a number on YouTube now, Exploring You. Please make any comments you can. That'd be great.